Hey, good day to all of you. Michael Didier here. Thank you for joining me. We're continuing our story about Moses. The Israelites soon are going to be coming out of Egypt. Yehovah last week met with Moses for the first time, spoke to him as it were face to face. Do you remember the fire in the bush? Yehovah speaking out of the fire. Remember, Torah said a messenger was speaking to Yehovah out of the fire. Yasher made it sound like Yehovah himself was speaking out of the fire. I tend to think it was Yehovah speaking out of the fire. It's his mountain. The mountain of the Elohim. Remember, we saw that last week. It's the Elohim on the mountain. We're going to serve. He said, this will be a sign to you. You will serve the Elohim on the mountain. Okay, that doesn't mean we're going to be at the mountain. It means we're going to be serving the Elohim who's at the mountain. The first thing that Yehovah said to Moses was, what's that in your hand? One of the first things anyway. What's that in your hand? A rod. Oh, it's his rod. Remember, Yehovah orchestrated Moses getting this rod from long before he actually got the rod. It was Jethro, Reuel, who took it from Egypt and planted it in his garden. We saw that it was a rod that was handed down from Adam, made its way to Noah, then Shem, then Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Joseph died. The elders of Egypt got it. But Reuel took it with him when he left Egypt. He was one of the counselors of the king. He actually counseled the king to leave Israel alone or let him go. That king didn't want to do either and ended up dying because of the horrific things that he was doing to destroy Israel's seed, the men, the Yaladim from his land. The older men he was going to let die, but he wanted to kill the son so that they wouldn't be multiplying. Well, Yehovah told him to go to Israel's seed. Tell them that I am the Elohim of their fathers. Abraham's Elohim, Isaac's Elohim, Jacob's Elohim. He's the one who established the covenant with them, and he's going to be taking them out, finally, to honor that covenant. Remember, what Yehovah says, Yehovah does. He made Moses an Elohim. He said, you shall be as Elohim. I wrote an article last week about the Elohim of the earth. Do you know there's Elohim on the earth right now? Obama is an Elohim. The judges and commissioners are Elohim. The mayors, the police stations, or the police chiefs, the sheriff's departments, all Elohim in our land. Governors, legislators, congressmen, Elohim in our land. We serve other Elohim. We're going to talk about the Hebrews. What makes a Hebrew a Hebrew? We'll talk about it this week. You know, I see on Facebook oftentimes, I'm a Hebrew. Oh boy, I left the traditions of men. Traditions of men? Is that what Abraham did when he left Ur? No, he was leaving the authority of any man ruling over him but Yehovah, and we're talking about men. Isaac dwelt in the land of Canaan also, as in a strange country. So did Jacob. They were the Hebrews. And they were understood as the Hebrews. They were called the Hebrews. Well, he said, Aaron would be a prophet to you. And it was just after that, in Torah and in Yasher, that Aaron was called. He was by the river. Go to your brother. He's at the Mount Horeb. Do you remember shortly before that, Moses, well, really, right after he talked with Yehovah, Moses talked to Raul. Jethro said, I need to go to Egypt. Got to deliver the people. He said, go. He took the rod. You know what? It's so interesting that this rod keeps getting mentioned. I always wondered about that. And when I finally found in Yasher where that rod came from, it made a whole lot more sense. It's the authority that Yehovah is giving the man that has that rod. Well, shortly after they left, Yehovah tried to kill Moses. Sent a melech gets translated as angel. I wonder if it wasn't a man trying to kill Moses. Miriam saw what was going on, realized what the problem was, and circumcised her firstborn son who hadn't been circumcised because Jethro, told Moses not to circumcise him. He did the next one, Eleazar, but he didn't circumcise Gershom. Well, the deliverer of Israel can't exactly go to Egypt to deliver them from the Egyptians if he doesn't have a circumcised son. Well, she quickly circumcised her son and delivered, it says, both Moses and Gershom from death. You know, that's really the second time that this dear woman, we're talking about Zipporah, has saved Moses. Remember, for 10 years, she fed him bread and water in the prison, her father's prison. He left him there to die. Well, she delivered him then, now she's delivered him now. And the very next thing that happens is Aaron shows up. What are you doing with these women? First he asks, who are these people? This is my woman. These are my sons. He says, they need to leave. We got business to take care of in Egypt. He didn't say it like that, but I think that's what's going on. I think they're going to be an inconvenience to them in Egypt. Send them back to her father. Don't hear much about Zipporah ever again, really. She comes to him in the wilderness, apparently leaves again, and that's all we hear from her. Well, Moses and Aaron then meet with the elders of Egypt. They show them the signs. They're excited. I think they're behind them, ready to be delivered. But you know what? I'm not sure Moses told them. I'm not sure Moses remembers that Yehovah has already twice said that I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. He's not going to let you go the first time. Not going to let you go the second time. Well, we're going to see he's not going to let him go for 10 times. And we're going to see this again today. We covered it in Yasher last week. When Moses and Aaron went to see Pharaoh, they went unannounced. Do you remember last week? Ooh, that was an amazing story. Lions chained to the gate, preventing people from coming in to see Pharaoh. They can only be released or come through the gate if Balaam and his brothers or his sons releases those lions from whatever spell they've got them under so that people can come through the gate. Well, Moses and Aaron just used a rod. I don't know if they touched the lions or waved it toward the lions, but they became like dogs, said glad to see their master come in from the field. Well, they appeared before Pharaoh. Pharaoh was not pleased. Unannounced visit from two men with a rod and lions at their side. How do you deal with these guys? No, they're afraid of the lions. Remember, the Pharaoh's 2 feet tall, wide, ugly, beard down to his feet. He didn't know what to do. He asked him to come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk about this. What did they say? Yehovah, Elohim of the Hebrews, says that you need to let Israel go. Let my son go, my firstborn, that he can serve me. We're talking about men. Yes, the ladies are going to go, but he's talking about the men. Firstborn are always male at the core. Son, duh, plural he. Serve, even that word serve, it comes from aved. It's abed, serve. It's masculine, that he may serve me. Well, he doesn't like it. Come and see me tomorrow, please. He does. Well, right after they leave, he talks to Balaam. First question Balaam asks, how did they get in? He says, surely they are magicians like us, tricksters. That was kind of the word he used, tricksters. We'll test them tomorrow, see if they're legitimate. Pharaoh did call for Moses and Aaron to come before him. The next day, they did. Give us a sign that we may believe, Pharaoh says. Took his rod, threw it on the ground. Really, I think he had Aaron do it. The rod turned to his serpents. Oh, they're impressed, but Balaam and his sons, his brothers, did the same thing with their rods. Turned it to a serpent. They could see, however, that Moses' serpent was getting ready to eat their serpents. And Balaam jumped in right away. Well, don't you know, this is what they do. Serpents eat serpents. What's the big deal about that? He says, I'll tell you what. You make your serpent back into a rod. We'll make our serpents back into a rod. And then if your rod eats our rods, then we'll believe. Well, you know what? That is exactly what we saw last week as we were closing. Well, after that, Yehovah, as he said, I'm going to harden his heart. And he did. And at that point, Pharaoh began to oppress Israel even more, making it harder for them to do their job, took their straw and made them gather stubble. Stubble, chaff, basically, is what we're talking about. Much harder to make your bricks. This is where we left off last week. We're going to see a repeat now of this first meeting that Moses and Aaron had with Pharaoh. Let's begin here in chapter 6. We finished chapter 5. Let me just show you how we finished chapter 5. Here it is. So Moses returned. This is the people. They were complaining to Pharaoh. We're your servants. This is Israel telling Pharaoh, where were your servants? Why do you treat your servants so harshly? Well, as they were leaving, because they didn't get any slack from Pharaoh, he says, you got to make your bricks. You got to make your quota. And no, you're not going to get straw. So as they're leaving, Moses finds them. Well, they're angry at Moses now. You're making our life harder. And so Moses, unhappy, goes back to Yehovah. Here's the last thing he said. So Moses returned to Yehovah and said, Adonai, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people at all. Well, as we talked about last week, this is exactly what he said would happen. Here it is right here. Twice he said, the king of Egypt will not let you go, so that he will not let the people go. He kept telling him that. And now, look at, he's going to start the same way here. Then Yehovah said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand, hear that? Strong hand, he will let them go. And with a strong hand, he will draw them out of his land. Ooh, this is really interesting to see strong hand of Yehovah. We're going to see in a moment. Remember, he's saying, this is before it happens. He's telling Moses what's going to happen. But we're going to see in chapter 8, he's going to talk about the finger of Yehovah. And then we're going to talk about the hand of Yehovah. And later on, we're going to talk about the strong arm, the outstretched arm, the holy arm of Yehovah as he delivers his people. You know, he says, with a strong hand, I'm going to do it. Well, we're going to see with a strong arm that he's going to do it. And you know what? He promises to do the same thing for us in these last days. You know what I see so often is that Yehovah goes beyond what he says he's going to do. He does what he says he's going to do, but he goes beyond it. The stick turning into a serpent. It wasn't the serpents that ate the serpents. It was the rod that ate the rods. I mean, is that amazing or what? He says he's going to deliver them with a strong hand. Well, we're going to see he's going to deliver them with a strong arm. And if he says he's going to deliver us with a strong arm in the last days, what can we expect? Oh my goodness. Maybe there's a reason he says, no longer will they say, great is Yehovah who delivered Israel's seed from the hands of the Egyptians. But great is Yehovah who delivered Egypt's seed from the north and from all the places where he had cast them out. Oh, we have so much more to look forward to if we will just become Yehovah's people. I'm going to save these verses for a little bit later when Balaam's sons say, this is the finger of Yehovah. How do they know it's the finger of Yehovah? Wow, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? And Elohim here. What Yehovah says, he does. And Elohim spoke to Moses and said, I am Yehovah. You know what? I want to put that in this color because I want to make sure that I remember that these are the words of Yehovah. When he says these kinds of things, remember, we're not supposed to take his name in vain. He isn't going to take his name in vain either. If he says it, he's going to do it. And if we swear in his name, we better do it too, because if we don't, we're taking his name in vain. That's what the third commandment's all about. Elohim spoke to Moses and said, I will do. I'm doing it in my name. He says, I am Yehovah. Ani, here's the word right here. Ani. Ani. I am Yehovah. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. Remember that? El Shaddai, strong authority who provides. El Shaddai. Remember, Shad was breast. He is our breast. He is the one who's going to give us the provisions that we need to carry on in his work. He is the Elohim who provides. I want to learn to trust in him. I'm learning how to do that. That's a daily walk. This week, I'm going to try adding AdSense to my blog. Perhaps Yehovah can use that to bring the sustenance that I need to be able to live the way I need to in this world and support my woman, or at least help. Struggles right now. But you know what? Yehovah is the one who provides. He's El Shaddai. Shad, let me show you that. It's really important that we see this. This term is used 4 times in Torah, and both Abraham and Jacob receive their names when it is used. Isn't that interesting? It happened in Genesis 17, which I said was preparation for a moed, a Passover, a time of life. El, strong authority, is the Aleph and the Lamed, strong authority, lawmaker, judge. But Shad, here's the word right here, Shad. This is ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible. It means breast. The pictograph, Shad, is the picture of 2 front teeth. The Dalet is a picture of a tent door that dangles. Combined, they mean 2 that dangle. It's the breasts. Yehovah feeds his people. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name, Yehovah, I was not known to them. Isn't that interesting? I always thought he did, but I went and looked back. Maybe, did they not know his name? Do they just refer, is it kind of the commentary that's referring to Yehovah as by his name, and they didn't know him as Yehovah? You know, I really thought they did. I'd have to look back at that really carefully. But this is what it says right here. By my name, I was not known to them. Maybe they didn't know the name as what I say I will do. This is how I've come to know the name of Yehovah. What he says, he does. He says in Ezekiel, I think it's 34:14, 37:14, maybe that's what it is, 37:14. He says, I am Yehovah. Ani Yehovah. What we're just talking about right in this last verse. Ani Yehovah. This right here. I am Yehovah. What I say, I will do. Then he finishes by saying what? Ani Yehovah. I am Yehovah. That's when it first came to me that Yehovah swears by his own name. That's when I started to understand what the 3rd commandment was all about, because we're supposed to swear in his name. Not the God, in God's name. What do they say? I swear the truth, the whole truth, nothing, so help me God. Who? God? Who are we talking about? Is that God the same God that we know? I don't think so. He says, I appeared to Abraham. I read that. I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage in which they were strangers. What's his covenant? Do you remember the covenants? We talked about it a little bit last week when Zipporah circumcised that son and called him a bloody husband. A bloody husband. It always makes him sound like she's mad at him. You bloody husband. No, he's a husband of blood. He says, you will be a husband of blood to me because of the covenant. That's a good thing. He says, this is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your seed after you. Hear that? This is my covenant. What's the covenant? Here it is. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins. And it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and thee. He who is 8 days old among thee shall be circumcised, every male child in thy generations. He who is born in your house, or bought with money from a foreigner, from a Ben-Nikar, who is not your seed. He who is born in your house, he who is bought with money, must be circumcised. And the covenant, let me move this up, and the covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. This is the covenant that we're talking about. It's about the seed and it's about the land. And he's going to see that the seed get the land, but you can't be the seed if you're not going to be circumcised and enter into the covenant. The covenant is made and renewed every year at Passover. I put he's remembering his covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yehovah is remembering his covenant. He says, so Elohim heard their groanings, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The men of Israel as a whole are not yet in covenant with Yehovah. They have some ways to go. You know, there's a reason. We talked about it last week. They're expecting to leave right away. Instead, they're getting greater persecution. Do you think if Moses had come to Egypt and said, hey guys, we're going, how many of you think would have followed this man into the wilderness on his word? A half a dozen? A dozen? More? Would it be 600,000 Gabor men as it was at the end of this time period? If they hadn't seen the strong arm of Yehovah working on their behalf. First the finger, then the hand, then the strong arm. No, I think we needed to see it. And I think we need to see it again. When he raises us up, puts a pile of fire over our heads, there's going to be a lot of people that'll come to us. There's going to be a lot who won't. But they probably will before too long, if they can. Maybe that they're going to be prevented from getting to us, and they're going to have to die rather than stay in Egypt. When you see the pillar and fire, get to the pillar and fire. It's the get out of jail free card. You got to do it quick. They can't keep us in, but they sure as heck can keep you from getting to us, and they will eventually. Well, let's keep going. I have established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage in which they were strangers. And I have also heard the groaning of Israel's seed, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage. And I have remembered my covenants. Yehovah is not going to forget his covenants. Remember Isaiah 58 talks about, no, Isaiah 49, I think it is, talks about, can a woman forget her nursing child? Interesting. That I will not forget you. Therefore, say to Israel's seed, I am Yehovah. This is what he's telling Moses to say to Israel's seed. I am Yehovah. Ani Yehovah. Look at, I will bring you from under the burden of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with a great judgment. I will take you as my people. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the men, not the ladies. The ladies belong to the men. They're going with the man. And he finally says, I will be your Elohim, your lawmaker and judge. Then you shall know that I am Yehovah, your Elohim, who brings you out from under the burden of the Egyptians. This is the first time he's going to say this. He's going to say it again. This is in Ezekiel 36. Look what he says. This is why I say so much of what happens one time is a shadow picture of what's going to happen in the latter days. Therefore say to Israel's house, thus says my master Yehovah, I do not do this for your sake, O house of Israel, but for my holy name's sake. It's not because of your greatness that you're going to inherit the land. That's what he told us before he went into Egypt or into Canaan. But because of their wickedness. It sounds like what he's saying here. I do not do this for your sake, O house of Israel, but for my holy name's sake, which you have profaned among the nations wherever you went. I will sanctify my great name. Is his great name sanctified yet? No, not yet. Most people don't even know his name. I'm trying to put his name out into the world as much as I can, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in their midst. And the nations shall know that I am Yehovah. There it is. Ani Yehovah. I am Yehovah, says my master. Yehovah, when I am hallowed in you before their eyes, I will take you from among the nations, gather you from the countries, and bring you into your land. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. I will cleanse you from all your filthiness and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. He's still talking to men. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and to keep my judgments and to do them. Then you shall dwell in the land which I gave to your fathers, not your mothers. You shall be my people, and I will be your Elohim. I will deliver you from all your uncleanliness. I will call for the grain and multiply it, and bring no famine upon you. I will multiply the fruit of the trees and the increase of your fields, so that you need never again bear the reproach of famine among the nations. Then you will, look at that, then you will, oh, the other ones have been, I will, then you will remember your evil ways and your deeds that were not good, and you will loathe yourselves in your own sight, for your iniquities and your abominations. Not for your sake do I do this, says my master, Adonai Yehovah. Let it be known to you, be ashamed and confounded of your own ways, O house of Israel. Well, that's kind of a shadow picture of what we're going to see. Here we are talking about the outstretched arm again. Therefore, say to Israel's seed, again, Yehovah Ani, I am Yehovah. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your Elohim. Then you shall know that I am Yehovah. There it is again. Yehovah, or Ani Yehovah. I am Yehovah, your Elohim, who brings you out from under the burden of the Egyptians. And I will bring you into a land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and I will give it to you as a heritage, as a possession is what we're talking about. It's a possession that we're going to have. He's talking to the men. The ladies don't get land. I will be your Elohim. Yeah, Pharaoh is their El right now, isn't he? He's their Elohim right now. Their El. So Moses spoke thus to Israel's seed, but they did not heed Moses. Hear that? Moses is talking to them, but they're not heeding to what Moses says. I like that word, heeding. You know what it's translated from? Look at this. It's translated from Shema. They will not heed to Moses. Oh, I guess I didn't have it in here. Let me see if I do. Oh, yeah, here it is right here. Hear and obey. Shema. Heed. You know, one thing to hear, it's another thing to heed. If you hear it and you do it, you're heeding it, aren't you? But they're hearing it, but they're not doing it. Sound like anybody we know? They were impatient with Moses, as we are. We want it now. You know what? I'm no different. I want it now. Father, come. I was really hoping this week would be the Shavuot, that he brings and puts a pillar of fire all over the earth. Didn't happen again this year. Rats. I want it to happen. But I see that in leaving the kingdoms of men and joining the kingdom of Yehovah, that things get harder. But we must endure the hardship if we want to reach the goal of our faith. What's the goal of our faith? Here it is. Glory and honor and immortality. That's the goal of our faith. Glory and honor and immortality. You know, we were created in the image of Elohim. We were created to live forever, to have that tree of life near us. We were created to die, but we can't live if we're not going to obey his ways. This life that we live in right now is kind of a testing period, isn't it? Will they obey me and follow me even even with hardship that comes with it? Or will they just do their own thing and live for the flesh? That's what most people do. They say they love Yehovah, but they're living for the flesh. They're not working to build his kingdom. They're not working for permanent things, for things that don't perish. I like this verse. This is a New Testament verse, Hebrews, on top of that. But I like this portion of Hebrews. It says, but recall the former days after which you were illuminated. You endured a great struggle with sufferings, partly while you were made a spectacle, both by reproaches and tribulations, and partly while you became companions with those who were so treated. For you had compassion on me in my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and enduring possession for yourselves in heaven. Therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. We are looking for glory and honor and immortality, and with that will come great reward. When we left Egypt the first time, we left with great possessions. Do you remember? It was our women who plundered Egypt. Each one went to her neighbor's house. Yes, the women are plundering Egypt, not the men. That just shows you how powerful we were. Even our women plunder Egypt. My goodness. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let Israel go out of his land. What did he tell him? Do you remember what he told him here? I bet I even have it here. No, maybe I don't. I was looking for, thus you shall say to Pharaoh, my son my firstborn is Israel. You shall let my son go, or I will kill your son. Yes, we're talking about men, sons, Bens. But when we're talking about Israel, his firstborn, there's a lot of people in Israel who are his Bekor, who aren't Bekor in the flesh. No, it's not about being Bekor in the flesh. It's about that second birth that we talk about at Passover when the Ger becomes the Ezra. That's the Bekor. That's when we become his son, his heir. And Moses spoke before Yehovah, saying, Israel's seed have not heeded me. He's complaining. Israel's seed's not even listening to me, Yehovah. What do I do? How then can Pharaoh heed me? For I am of uncircumcised lips. I think he's realizing his weaknesses in the flesh. I think we all realize our weaknesses in the flesh. We have to overcome those. Yehovah said, you shall be as Elohim, and Aaron shall be your prophet. We've got to remember what Yehovah says. We've got to act on his word and not on our own inabilities. I think that's what we do so often. I know it's what I do. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses. Oh, here, where's my notes saying? This is why we had the first 3 plagues fall on us as well. Yeah, why did we have them fall on us? Because we didn't heed what Moses had to say. At the end of 3 plagues, I think Israel is starting to say, I think I'm starting to get it. Israel's seed have not heard me. How shall Pharaoh shema me? This is the word that we're talking about in both cases. Heeded. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a command for Israel's seed and for Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring Israel out of the land of Egypt. It's a command for Pharaoh, and it's a command for Israel's seed. Hear that? Israel's seed has got to come out of Egypt. It kind of reminds me of this verse in Isaiah 52. Let's just go there real quick. I think it's Isaiah 52, verse... it's an 8. It's going to be before that. 52, where do I want to go? There it is. For you shall not go out in haste. Let me read it from 11. Depart, depart, go out from there. Touch no unclean thing. Go out from the midst of her. From where? Egypt. Babylon. Go out from the midst of her. Be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yehovah. For you shall not go out in haste. Don't go out hastily, nor go out by flight. Don't go out by fear. For Yehovah will go before you, and the Elohim of Israel, Israel's Elohim, will be your rear guard. He's going to go before us, and he's going to go after us to protect our derrieres. This is what I want. He's telling us to leave. Thus, Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a command for Israel's seed and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt. Well, now all of a sudden, we have a hiatus. What happened to our story? It says, these are the heads of their fathers' houses. Well, it talks about Reuben, it talks about Simeon, and it talks about Levi, the first 3 sons of Jacob. Here. Here they are, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, his first three sons. Doesn't talk about the other sons. Why? I think it's about introducing Moses and Aaron more than it is about anything else. Here's what he says. These are the heads of their father's house. The heads of their father's house. B'nai Reuben. Reuben's seed. The firstborn of Israel. Were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, Carmi. These are the families of Reuben. That's it. B'nai Simeon and B'nai Simeon were Jemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yakin, Zochar, Shaul, the son of the Canaanite woman. Remember, Simeon married Dinah. She gave him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sons, and the Canaanite, her maidservant, who he took as a concubine, gave him Shaul. These are the families of Simeon. Now he finishes with Levi's seed. And these are the name of Levi's seed, according to their generations: Kohath, Gershon, and Merari. And the years of the life of Levi were 137. Gershom's seed were Libni and Shimni, according to their families. The sons of Kohath were Amram, Itzar, Hebron, and Uzziel. And the years of the life of Korah were 133 years. Sons of Merari were Mali and Mushi. These are the families of Levi according to their generations. Now Amram, here, we're going to Amram. Now Amram took for himself, who's Amram? Remember what we said? Here it is right here. Kohath, son of Levi, had Amram. This is the father of Moses. Now Amram took for himself Jochebed. Jochebed. Who's Jochebed? His father's sister as a wife. His father's sister, who's his father? Kohath. Oh, so Gershom, Kohath, and Merari have a sister. Her name was Jochebed. You know what? We don't even know it, do we? But she did. His father's sister as his woman. And she bore him Aaron and Moses. And the years of the life of Amram are 137 years. How old was Amram when we came in to Egypt? You know, you begin to realize that Amram is the son of Kohath. I guess Amram would have been born in Egypt, but he's the son of Kohath. So we have Levi coming in with Kohath, obviously older. He's going to have Amram. Amram's going to have Moses. No way you're going to get 430 years out of that, are you? No, we're talking 210 years in Egypt. And the years of the life of Amram were 137 years. Now it continues. The sons of Itzar were Kohath, Nepheg, and Zikri. Oh, this man Kohath. Gee, there's so many things that we could talk about. I think we've done enough with Jochebed in the past. We'll skip that. This is the same Korah that is, it says Moses and Aaron and Korah had the same grandpa, Kohath. Korah was their cousin. This is the Korah who's going to die in the wilderness. And the sons of Kohath were, we just did that, or we're doing that right now. Let me skip down. Now Korah, the son of Itzar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the son of Eliab, and On, we always forget about On, Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and On, the son of Palat, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose before Moses with some of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. These men of renown all died because they were trying to usurp the word of Yehovah and his promise that Aaron was going to serve before him as the priests. They wanted to be priests before Yehovah. They didn't want to carry things. The sons of Uzziel were 3, and Aaron took to himself Elisheba. Hear that? You don't often think about who he married. Guess we know he had sons because they're the ones who are going to be the priests, so he has to have sons. But hardly ever talk about Elisheba, daughter of Amminadab, sister of Nahshon, as his woman, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Remember, right after these boys were made into priests, they died within days practically. I don't know, did it go to their heads? It says, then Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took a censer and put fire in it, put incense on it, and offered profane fire before Yehovah, which he did not command them. So fire went out from Yehovah and devoured them, and they died before Yehovah. You know, this is why we don't add to or take away from Yehovah's word. If he's going to kill his priests, you better know that if you're going to add to him and do things that he didn't ask you to do, we better have some fear of Yehovah. I don't want to be destroyed by Yehovah. I have too much at stake. I've invested too much. I love my father, but I have great respect for him. I'm not going to overstep my boundaries. And the sons of Korah were Asur, Elkanah, and Aviasaph. These are the families of the Korathites. And Eleazar, here's the son of Aaron. Aaron's ben. Eleazar ben Aaron took for himself one of the daughters of Putiel. Putiel, who is Putiel? Did we talk about Putiel up here? I don't see a Putiel. No, doesn't look like it. Daughter of Putiel as his woman, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads of the families of the house of the Levites according to their families. We're talking about men. The ladies are not even being mentioned. Did they have daughters? Of course they had daughters. But these are the sons. These are the heads of the father's house, of Levi's house. These are the same Aaron and Moses, to whom Yehovah said, bring out Israel's seed from the land of Egypt, according to they put armies. What's the word they're using here? Zebah. Zebah. According to their hosts, I think is probably a better way to say there. They're armies, but they're his hosts. We always talk about Yehovah's host. Israel's seed is Yehovah's earthly host. He's got a heavenly host, angels who will work with him, but he's got an earthly host as well. Bring out Israel's seed from the land of Egypt according to their hosts. How come they only did Reuben, Simeon, and Levi? I don't know. Did part of it get left out? Maybe. These are the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out Israel's seed from Egypt. Remember, he said that he told Moses that you and Aaron and the elders of Israel shall go to Pharaoh. Yeshua only had Moses going to Pharaoh and Aaron. Why is that? And have they even been to him yet? They haven't done the rod yet. We're going to see that in the next chapter, I think. Or maybe even the chapter after that. Let's find out. We're almost done with these chapters. These are the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out Israel's seed from Egypt. And these are the same Moses and Aaron. Maybe he's talking about... No, I think he's talking about the elders. And these are the same. Well, these are the same. These Moses and Aaron. Maybe it's not two groups. And it came to pass on the day Yehovah spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, that Yehovah spoke to Moses. All right, that's a little redundant. Saying, again, what's he going to say? I am Yehovah. Ani Yehovah. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say to you. Behold, and here he is. This is Moses again. But Moses said before Yehovah, behold, I am uncircumcised lips, and how shall Pharaoh heed me? Second time, I like to see things duplicated. I always watch for duplication. I think it's important when Yehovah mentions something like that. He's trying to bring it out. I am of uncircumcised lips. Well, here's how you're going to do it, Moses. So Yehovah said to Moses, he's going to remind him, see, I have made you as Elohim to Pharaoh. He already said, you shall be as Elohim, and Aaron shall be your prophet. No, you shall be as Elohim to Aaron, is what he said in the beginning. Maybe I even have it here. Yeah, I do. Now you, Moses, shall speak to Aaron and put the words in his mouth. And I, Yehovah, will be with your mouth and with his mouth. And I will teach you what you shall do. So he shall be your spokesman to the people, and he himself shall be as a mouth to you, and you shall be to him as Elohim. Yes, there it is right there. Now what's he saying? I am uncircumcised lips. No, Moses! I have made you as Elohim to Pharaoh. And Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet. Go in boldly. You're the lawmaker and the judge. Hold your ground. Well, that's exactly what they did. We saw it last week. This is a review still of what we did last week. He's going to go to Pharaoh right now. First time. Watch what happens. This is the time that, no, I take it back. This is the second time. But this is the time that he is going to bring the rod with him. No, he had the rod with him the first time. This is when he's going to put the rod on the ground. Let me just talk about this Elohim business a little bit more. I see I have a couple extra verses. Here's verse 7, verse 1. I guess that's what we just talked about. Here's one in Psalms 82. It says, they do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. I said, you are Elohim, and all of you are sons of the Most High. Okay, just because he says that doesn't mean that everybody who reads this is a son of Elohim. Who's he talking to? You got to ask yourself that question. But you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O Elohim, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. You are Elohim. Then you shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron, your brother, shall tell Pharaoh to send Israel's seed out of his land. Send Israel's seed out of his land. and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. This is the fourth time that he's going to say this. I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in Egypt's land. But Pharaoh will not heed you. Oh, this is the third time he's doing it, not the fourth time. But Pharaoh will not heed you, so that I may lay my hand on Egypt and bring my host and my people, Israel's seed, out of Egypt by great judgments. Who is Israel's seed? Do you hear this? My hosts, my people, Israel's seed. Who are those who go out strong, men or women? It's the men. Israel's seed are the people that we're talking about. They are the hosts. They are the people that he's talking about. They have people with them. And their people are still Yehovah's people, but he's not talking about them. He's talking about the heads of the house of these families. His host. He just told us who they were in the last chapter. Well, I'm not going to go over the other places where he said these things. Here's the word again, hosts. Zabah, his people. Israel's seed are all the same people. The hosts, his people, and Israel's seed are all the same people. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Yehovah. How will they know it? When all these people go out of the land of Egypt with great judgments. Yes, then they're going to know that Yehovah is Elohim. I am, remember, it's about getting to know who Yehovah is. We're going to see his strong arm work for us. When I stretch out, here, look what he says, when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out Israel's seed from among them. This is what he always promised to do his hand. But we're going to see it's his arm that he's going to use. He's going to do better than we expect. I think that's pretty cool that he goes in beyond and above what he says he's going to do. Then Moses and Aaron did so, just as Yehovah commanded them, so they did. Look at this. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. This is the first time that they're going to speak to Pharaoh. Remember, they're going to speak to him 2 days in a row. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves. Then you may say to Aaron, take your rod, cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become as a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, and they did so, just as Yehovah commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Oh my! But Pharaoh also called the wise men, the sorcerers. So the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. Each man threw down his rod, and they became serpents. Before I finish that, let me go through these notes here just real quick. Balaam is the magician. When he saw the city of Cush was taken, he opened up the gates, and he and his 2 sons and 8 brothers fled and returned to Egypt. They are the sorcerers, the magicians, sorcerers, magicians, as we had mentioned in this last verse, in the book of Torah, standing against Moses when Yehovah brought the plagues on Egypt. Yasher said it was the rod, the standard of Melchizedek, that ate up the other rods. Remember what I was telling you today? Threw the rod on the ground, they threw their rods. His rod, Moses' rod, was getting ready to eat their rods, but it didn't. This is why Balaam spoke up saying, well, of course, this is the way of the world. Animals eat animals. Snakes eat snakes. What does that prove? He saw the writing on the wall. So it was he and his sons, maybe his brothers, who said, let's turn it back into the rod and see if the rod eats it. And it did. But now look at what it says here in Torah. We miss it because we just assume certain things. It says, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. It doesn't say Aaron's serpent swallowed up their serpents. It said Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. That's what actually happened. That's why it was so much greater of a miracle. That's why I say Yehovah goes above and beyond what he said he was going to do. But even though they said, and they did say this in Yasher, they didn't say it in Torah, he says, let's have the rods swallow the rods. Then we'll believe. Well, it did. But they didn't. And Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them as Yehovah had said. No, they did not heed him. Just as Yehovah had said. Yeah, he told them they weren't going to do it. But Pharaoh will not heed you. No, he didn't heed him. So Yehovah said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. Now, this is so weird. This says, go to Pharaoh in the morning. Makes it sound like it happened really fast, doesn't it? He was there with the lions. The next day, we're having the rod business. And now this makes it sound like the next day. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. Maybe, though, it's not the next day. So Yehovah said to Moses, gosh, it sure makes it sound like he's talking to him at the same time. Well, let me show you what it looks like. It says, is it possible that there are 2 years between verses 13 and 14? Or maybe 12 and 13? 14 and 15? Maybe that's what I should say, 14 and 15. I think I will. Between 14 and 15. Seems to make more sense. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. Look what it says. At the end of 2 years, Yehovah again sent to Moses. Here, let's read it in Yasher. That's where we're at in Yasher right now. At the end of 2 years, Yehovah sent Moses to Pharaoh to bring forth Israel's seed and to send them out of the land of Egypt. Is it possible that they were another 2 years under bondage after this? Why did Yehovah wait? Why does it have 2 years? And Moses went and came to Pharaoh's house of Pharaoh, to the house of Pharaoh, Pharaoh's house. And he spoke to him the words of Yehovah who had sent him. But Pharaoh would not hearken to the voice of Yehovah. Oh, well, here we go. This is 14 again. Pharaoh would not hearken to the voice of Yehovah. Isn't that what we just read? Almost word for word. Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them as Yehovah had said. So Yehovah said, Pharaoh's heart is hard, he refuses to let the people go. Well, that's why I say this seems to be the same thing. And Elohim roused his might in Egypt upon Pharaoh. Roused his might in Egypt upon Pharaoh and his subjects. And Elohim smote Pharaoh and his people with a very great and sore plagues. Plagues. This is not just the one. This is the introduction to all the plagues. And Yehovah sent by the hand of Aaron and turned all the waters of Egypt into blood with all their streams and rivers. Go on, read all this. Yeah, I'll read the next 2 verses. And when the Egyptians came to drink and draw water, he looked into his pitcher, and behold, all the waters had turned into blood. And when he came to drink from his cup, the waters in the cup became blood. And when the women kneaded their dough and cooked their victuals, their appearance was turned to that of blood. That's the blood that we're dealing with right now. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to the water, and you stand by the river's bank to meet him, and the rod which was turned into a serpent you shall take in your hand. He's always talking about this rod. Do you see how often this is happening? Why? Now we know what this rod is all about. And you shall say to him, Yehovah is telling Moses to do all these things. And you shall say to him, Yehovah, the Hebrews' Elohim, has sent me to you. The Hebrews' Elohim has sent me to you. I want to double check something. There's that definite article there with the Hebrews. I'm just curious as to whether or not it is. I would assume that it is. Let's just take a quick look. It starts with the and. So it has the Hebrews. We're talking about the Hebrews. The Hebrews Elohim. The Elohim of the Hebrews is usually how they want to say it, but it's the Hebrews Elohim. What's a Hebrew? You know, these are things that we look at. We see them all the time. You look on Facebook. This is one of my pet peeves. I see people that put these notes out. It says, I'm a Hebrew. I've left the traditions of men. Is that what makes a man a Hebrew? These are usually women that are putting these out, not men that do it. It's the women that do it. But are we talking about what makes a man a Hebrew? We can talk about what makes a woman a Hebrew. It has to do with what a man is. Well, I know. People don't want to hear it. I know lots of people that don't want to hear that. This is exactly what we're talking about. What makes a man a Hebrew? Who does he call Hebrews? Let's take a look at some verses and consider these things. These are important things that we've got to understand. Where do I have to look? I guess I can just go right here. Let's start here. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says Yehovah, Israel is my son, my Bakar, firstborn, male child. There are no female Bakar. So I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. Another evidence that we're talking about Aved. Serve. Men serve. Men are called the Eved, and they are Abed. They serve Yehovah. But if you refuse, if you refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill your son, your Bakar. No, he didn't kill his daughters, he killed his son. Yehovah's son serves and has a covenant only with him. This is the verse we just went through. Whoops. There we go. What makes a Hebrew a Hebrew is what I asked this morning on Facebook. Here's the times that we saw this word Hebrew being used. The first few times. I think there was one more before this. It was Joseph. Yeah, oh, here it is right here. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews. This is Joseph. First time Hebrews are being mentioned in the Torah. And also, I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon. This is when he was in jail for those 12 years, 13 years, I forget exactly what it was. Well, here's the next time it was used. This is, I guess this is 8. I'm going to go down here to this one's Exodus 2. And when she opened it, this is Moses' mom. What was his mom's name? Does anybody remember right offhand? And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews, Yelodim. Bathia. Yes, that's her name, honey. Thank you. Bathia was his mom's name, his stepmom's name, the daughter of Pharaoh. Malal's daughter. Remember Malal? He's the one that got so sick at the end and died. It was such a mess they couldn't even embalm him. Here's the next time it's mentioned. Then they will heed your voice, and you shall come, and you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt. And you shall say to him, Yehovah, Elohim of the Hebrews, has met with us. Hear that? This is Yehovah telling Moses to tell Pharaoh that he, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has met with us. Is the Elohim of the Egyptians? How about the Elohim of the Babylonians? How about the Elohim of the English or the Americans? No, we're talking about Hebrews. Hebrews. What makes a man a Hebrew? So they said, the Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the desert and slaughter to Yehovah our Elohim, lest he fall on us with pestilence and sword. Exodus 7. Is that the one we're on right now? Yeah, that's the one we're on right now. And you shall say to Yehovah, the Hebrews, the Elohim of the Hebrews has sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But indeed, until now, you would not hear. Here's verse 8. Let's do this one first. Or Exodus 8. It's next chapter. We're going to do this. And in that day, I will set apart the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell. Okay, the land of Goshen is where his people dwell, that no swarm shall be there, in order that you may know that I am Yehovah, Ani Yehovah, in the midst of the land. I will make a difference between my people and your people. Okay, what makes you his people and what makes you Pharaoh's people? It all has to do with the covenants that we make and who we serve. We're going to see it in the last days. When they come out to us, they aren't going to need a driver's license anymore. They're not going to need all the documents that they have that shows your papers, please. Shows who they belong to, where they come from. It's irrelevant where we come from. What matters is where we're going and who we serve. I put the Hebrews keep different laws and serve a different master. You know what? I really like this verse. This is in Esther. This is Haman talking to King Ahasuerus. I guess how you say it. There's a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples. They do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. Hear that? They do not keep the king's laws. That's why people don't like us, because we serve a different master. Let's continue. And you shall say to him, Yehovah, the Hebrews Elohim has sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But indeed, until now, you would not hear. Thus says Yehovah. Thus says Yehovah. Look at this. Thus says Yehovah. He's using his name, but he's going to use his name right again in this. By this you shall know that Ani Yehovah, I am Yehovah. Behold, I will strike the waters, which are in the rivers, with the rod that is in my hand. This is what he's saying, Moses is saying to Pharaoh. No, I guess this is what he's telling Moses to say to Pharaoh. Let's get it right. Thus says Yehovah, by this you shall know that I am Yehovah. I will strike the waters which are in the river with a rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that are in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Egyptians will loathe to drink the water of the river. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses. I always like to kind of keep track of who's talking. Say to Aaron, take your rod, stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their streams, over their rivers, over their ponds, over their pools of water, that they may become blood. I could see Aaron taking the rod, holding it out, and doing a whole circle as he goes around with that rod, holding it over all of Egypt, that they may become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, all Egypt's land, both in buckets of wood and pitchers of stone, both in wood and stone. And Moses and Aaron did so, just as Yehovah commanded. So he lifted up the rod and struck the waters that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. We're talking about men servants here. Avadim are men servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. He's going to always talk about Pharaoh, his Avadim, and his people. Again, men people. The lady people are going to be affected. The servants of the men people are going to be affected. The servants of the servants are going to be affected. But he's talking to the servants and the people that he's going to put these curses on. Well, here's the curses. This is not my work. I believe this was my friend Glenn McWilliams who put this together. I liked it when I saw it. I kind of wonder sometimes if we work a little too hard to put things into a nice little box and try to, I don't know, I kind of feel like that's kind of what's going on. He says, each of the plagues demonstrated Jehovah's power over the false images of Egypt. Yeah, well, I think they do. He talks about Hepti, the god of the river. The river's getting turned to blood. But remember, we just saw, it was just last week. Remember Pharaoh, this little short Pharaoh that we're talking about? He says, the river is my own, I created it. Is this in Pharaoh's face or is it in Hepi's face? I think it's more in Pharaoh's face. Well, so then we had frog god, goddess, plague of frogs, and so on and so forth. God of insects. I don't think it was insects. I think it was swarms of a lot of different things. Hathor, cow-faced goddess, the livestock being smitten. It goes on and on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It says, the fish that were in the river died. The river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink the water of the river. So there was blood throughout the land of Egypt. The magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. Great! The magicians, hey, they can turn it to blood too. Great. Can you change it to water? Then the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them as Yehovah had said. No. But so what? The magicians could also turn water to blood, but they could not turn it back to water. All they did was assist Moses with the plagues. And it says Pharaoh did not shema them. 23. And Pharaoh turned and went into his house. Neither was his heart moved by this. Well, this is what we see over and over and over again. Pharaoh is not going to change. When did the blood turn back to water? Oh, here it is right here. This is what he said. This is Yashar 79. We read it last week. And the anger of the king was kindled at their words. And he said to them, who amongst all the Elohim of the nations can do this? My river is my own. I have made it. Oh, you know what? I take it back. I think this is when we were talking about who is Yehovah, that I do not know Yehovah. Who is Yehovah that I should know him? My river is my own. I have made it. Well, if the river is your own and you've made it, why don't you turn it back to water? And Pharaoh turned and went into his house. Neither was his heart moved by this. So the Egyptians dug all around the river for water to drink. Sounds like they've got to dig a hole and let the water run into the hole in order to get some water that's potable, because they could not drink the water of the river. And 7 days passed after Yehovah struck the river. 7 days passed after Yehovah struck the river. Does that mean the river went back to normal after 7 days? Good, I suppose. It was not as if they did not have water. It was just that now the whole life was consumed with getting it. And if they had stock, life was even harder. Yeah, if they had livestock, it would have been even harder to get the water, wouldn't it? To keep your livestock alive. Yes, life was even harder. This is how it will be when Yehovah strikes the earth and turns it into a desolation in the wilderness. No more water in the faucet or food at the stores. You know, we're going to see this. This is going to be life-changing, isn't it? We don't need to have water get turned into blood. Just have the lack of water. It's going to be unbearable. Our life will be consumed with getting that water, won't it? What's my last note say? This lasted 7 days. How long did all 10 plagues last? You know, when you look at this, it says 2 years passed. I always thought, boom, 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 boom. But you know what? I really think that this was a drawn-out process. This lasted a long time. This wasn't just a few months. That this may have gone on for quite some time. When did Moses stop this plague? Did it stop by itself? You know, those are all questions that we have to ask. That's why I say, lasted 7 days? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, I don't know. This next chapter is a little bit longer, but maybe we can get through the second or maybe even the third plague also. Let's try. And Yehovah spoke to Moses. Okay, here's Yehovah speaking to Moses. We're going to see that there's going to be times that Moses is going to do things. And you know what? It seems like it's more ending the plagues than it is beginning the plagues. I really thought that there was going to be some plagues that Moses brought on Israel that Yehovah did not. But as I was reading through it again this week, I thought, well, no, this is Yehovah doing it. But it seems often that Moses is the one that ends it. Kind of watch for that. Yehovah says, Yehovah did according to what Moses had spoken, is what it's going to say. And Yehovah spoke to Moses. Go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says Yehovah. Remember, he says, you will be an Elohim to Pharaoh. Be as Elohim to Pharaoh. Let my people go that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite your territory with frogs. So here comes the frogs. This is the second plague. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, in the houses of your servants, on your people, into your ovens, and into your kneading bowls. Here's what it says. And the frogs shall come up on you. The frogs will come up on you, on your people, and on your servants. Look what it says in Yasher. No, let's go to Yasher. Oh, no, I'm going to wait. And the frogs shall come up on you, on your people, and on all your servants. I'm going to read through this, and then we'll go to Yasher. Yasher's short. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams. Again, we're using that rod again, aren't we? Over the rivers, over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters. Can you imagine? As we get going in this, Pharaoh's going to hear it and then think, oh, stop, don't do it. But here's Aaron already going around and doing it. I could just see it happening. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, Egypt's waters, and the frogs came up and covered Egypt's land. Egypt's waters. Over Egypt's waters, yes. What is the word there? Mayim. Mayim. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs on the land of Egypt. Great, they're doing it again, helping Moses, aren't they? Silly magicians are still helping create the plagues. And Pharaoh called to Moses and Aaron and said, entreat Yehovah, help, that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go that they may sacrifice to Yehovah. And Pharaoh called to Moses and Aaron and said, entreat Yehovah that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go that they may slaughter to Yehovah. It's the men people who slaughter to Yehovah, not the lady people. And Moses said to Pharaoh, accept the honor of saying, when I shall intercede for you, for your servants and for your people to destroy the frogs. Isn't it weird? This is Moses talking to Pharaoh. Pharaoh is entreating Moses. Pharaoh called to Moses, entreat Yehovah that he may take away the frogs. He's appealing to Moses to appeal to Yehovah. And Moses said to Pharaoh, accept the honor of saying. Accept the honor of saying. What does that even mean? Accept the honor of saying. When I shall intercede for you, for your servants and your people to destroy the frogs from you and your houses, that they may remain in the river only. So he said, tomorrow, this is Moses. He didn't talk to Yehovah about it, did he? This is Moses saying, tomorrow. And he said, let it be according to your word, that you may know that there is no one like Yehovah, our Elohim. Let it be according to your word. What was his word? You can go slaughter. That they may go, let the people go, that they may sacrifice, slaughter to Yehovah. Never sacrifice. There is no word for sacrifice in the scriptures. So he said, tomorrow, okay, and the frogs shall depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, and from your people. They shall remain in the rivers only. This is Moses talking. He didn't confer with Yehovah. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to Yehovah concerning the frogs which he brought against Pharaoh. So Yehovah, look at what this says. So Yehovah did according to the word of Moses. Isn't that interesting? This is how it is with the Shalach, the sent one. He speaks for Yehovah. He speaks Yehovah's words, but he also speaks for Yehovah. There are things that are going to happen. What is even Yeshua was saying in the New Testament? Greater things you shall do. If one says to the mountain, move, it moves. No, there's things that are going to be happening by the words of our mouth. Just like it is with Moses. Yehovah is going to honor the words of his shalakim, his sent ones. So Yehovah did according to the word of Moses. And the frogs died out of the houses, out of the courtyards, out of the fields. They gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw their relief, he hardened his heart and did not heed to them as Yehovah had said. Yes, that's what Yehovah said would happen. Well, before we go to the third plague, let's read about it in Yasher. It's real short. And Yehovah again sent and caused all the waters to bring forth frogs. And all the frogs came into the houses of the Egyptians. And when the Egyptians drank, their bellies were filled with frogs, and they danced in their bellies. And they danced as they danced when in the river. And all their drinking water and cooking water turned to frogs. Also, when they lay in their beds, their perspiration bred frogs. I said, okay. But then I saw what it said in Exodus, and I thought, well, maybe there is something to this. Let's read it again before I read the exact verse. There it is right here. It said, yeah, here. And the frogs shall come up on you. Come up on you. Come into your ovens, into your kneading bowls, come up on you. I just assumed they were jumping on us, on your people, on your servants. Is it possible they were coming from us? It says the perspiration. I know, it's extreme, isn't it? We've seen some of these extreme things in Torah, but have you ever heard of a rod eating a rod? Sounds to me like that's what Torah is saying also. Just a thought. Let's go back to Yasher, read that last verse. Notwithstanding all this, the anger of Yehovah did not turn from them, and his hand was outstretched against all the Egyptians to smite them with every heavy plague. Oh, what was the time frame from one plague to the next plague? Boom, boom, boom. It's kind of what I always thought. Now that it said 2 years had passed between the one and the other, makes me wonder. Makes me wonder what actually is the timeline. There's the 2 years. All right, well, we're going to stop. Pick it up again next week with the fourth plague. Fourth plague? Lice. Guess that is going to be the third plague, isn't it? All right. Well, there's still one more plague that's going to fall on Goshen, just as it fell on Egypt. Remember, we had 3 plagues fall on us. I think it was to turn our hearts back to Yehovah. Remember, the Israelites or the Levites never served Yehovah. But the rest of Israel, they served Yehovah. They followed him, called themselves his servants. And they were. Made a covenant with him. Levites didn't. I'm always impressed by that. Well, we're going to stop here. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining me today. We have lots of fun things to continue talking about. So please continue joining us. Love you tons. Bye now.